They rumble, they roar, and some of them look like they were pieced together in a mad scientist barn. But make no mistake, every single machine you're about to see actually ran. Around the world, farmers, engineers, and hobbyists have taken the humble tractor and turned it into something much more or much weirder. From gigantic field monsters to strange, stripped-down machines that defy logic, we're counting down 15 bizarre tractors from around the world that broke the mold. Some were built by major manufacturers pushing boundaries. Others were homegrown experiments that somehow worked. You'll see V8-powered beasts, oddball three-wheel designs, bright yellow giants from brands long gone, and machines that look more like tanks or alien vehicles than anything meant to touch a farm. Expect iconic names like Massey Ferguson, Stiger, International Harvester, and White, but not in any form you've seen before. Some of these tractors were ahead of their time, some were products of pure necessity, and a few were just flat out insane. But all of them ran, at least once. So get ready to fire up your curiosity, because this isn't your typical top 15. These are the wildest, weirdest, most bizarre tractors from around the world that actually ran. Number 15, the Valtra BM110 is one of the most bizarrely beloved tractors ever built. A machine so simple, it borders on absurd, yet so tough, it's practically mythological. Designed in Brazil with Finnish roots, the BM110 was made to endure brutal fieldwork without a hint of modern luxury or digital trickery. It ran on a naturally aspirated four-cylinder Sisu engine, producing around 110 horsepower. But what set it apart wasn't performance. It was indestructibility. Farmers told stories of these things running on ancient tar-thick oil, surviving years without maintenance, and starting up after floods, fires, and falls off trailers. The cab layout felt like someone shuffled switches in a bingo tumbler before installation, and the ride was stiff enough to rattle your soul. It lacked electronics, creature comforts, and finesse. Yet it was celebrated for exactly those reasons. It was a tractor that worked when nothing else would, a mechanical mule with zero tolerance for nonsense. In an age of overcomplicated tech and blinking dashboards, the BM110 stood proudly weird, unyielding, loud, and completely unbothered. How did a tractor this crude earn cult status among farmers? Maybe because it never tried to be anything it wasn't. Number 14. The Yanmar TC11 is one of the strangest looking and most oddly fascinating machines to ever set tire on a farm. It's part tractor, part mini tank, and part mechanical mystery. Designed in Japan with extreme compactness in mind, this tiny crawler tractor looks more like something you'd see in a post-apocalyptic anime than in a rice field. Yet it was purpose-built for tight, terraced landscapes and soft soils. Instead of wheels, it runs on tracks, giving it incredible grip and maneuverability in muddy conditions. But its real oddity lies in the proportions. It's absurdly low, hilariously narrow, and features a seat perched directly over the engine, like someone forgot where the driver was supposed to sit. Powered by a small but gutsy diesel engine, producing around 11 horsepower, the TC11 isn't about speed or power, it's about crawling precision, able to inch along while doing delicate tilling or planting work. The controls are laid out like a cryptic puzzle, with levers and knobs scattered in places that seem designed more for curiosity than convenience. And yet, despite, or maybe because of, its peculiar appearance and feel, the TC11 has a loyal following among farmers who appreciate its nimble utility. Is it a joke, a genius design, or just Yanmar being weird for the sake of function? Whatever it is, the TC11 refuses to be ignored. Number 13. The Case 450 crawler dozer might look like your standard yellow bulldozer, but there's something bizarrely lovable and oddly frustrating about this mid-sized machine that's earned it cult status among old-school operators. Built from the late 1960s through the 1980s, the 450 was a bare-bones beast that mixed brute strength with mechanical mystery. Its diesel engine, delivering around 50 horsepower, powered a machine that felt both overbuilt and under-designed at the same time. Solid in frame, but unpredictable in behavior. The transmission was known for its quirks, with some models featuring a hand clutch and gear pattern that seemed designed more for confusion than convenience. The seats shook like a jackhammer on gravel. The controls had the precision of soggy spaghetti, and yet operators swore they could feel every inch of terrain through its bones. And then there's the infamous steering. Lever-operated clutches that either worked flawlessly or seemed to have a mind of their own, causing spontaneous pirouettes mid-push. Despite all this, or maybe because of it, the 450 earned a reputation for being nearly unkillable and easier to fix with a wrench and a prayer than any modern equivalent. Was it a brilliant machine trapped in a bizarre design, or just proof that weird can still get the job done? Number 12. The Massey Ferguson 4880 is a bizarre brute of a tractor, massive, square, and unapologetically mechanical, like a Cold War-era bunker on wheels. Built in the late 1970s and early 1980s, it was part of Massey's push into the high-horsepower four-wheel drive market. But what made the 4880 truly strange wasn't just its size, it was its personality. Powered by a thirsty Detroit diesel V8 two-stroke engine, producing around 300 horsepower, the 4880 screamed like a chainsaw under load, an unsettling howl that echoed across fields and rattled windows in nearby towns. Its cab sat high like a command post, boxy and bare, with oddly placed levers and a gear shift that felt more like operating a crane than a tractor. The ride was bone-jarring, the handling stiff, and the fuel consumption borderline criminal. But it pulled like an enraged ox and refused to give up, even when neglected. Mechanics either loved it for its raw simplicity or cursed it for its temperamental engine and appetite for oil. The 4880 was absurd, loud, and a little terrifying, yet somehow endearing to those who dared to tame it. Was it a workhorse or a wild beast in disguise? Maybe both, and that's what made it unforgettable. Number 11, the Farml F20 is a bizarre relic from the early mechanized age of farming. A spindly, steel-wheeled machine that looks more like a piece of industrial art than a tractor. Built from the mid-1930s through the early 1940s, it was part of International Harvester's effort to bring affordable row crop power to small farms, but its design choices were downright eccentric. The F20 ran on a four-cylinder engine that started on gasoline and then switched to kerosene or distillate, a process that required hand cranking and a level of patience that bordered on spiritual. It had tall, narrow wheels that made it look like it was walking on stilts, with steel lugs so aggressive they could tear up a barn floor if you weren't careful. Steering was more suggestion than control. The seat was a metal pan bolted over vibrating steel, and the controls felt like they were thrown together by a committee that never met. Yet despite its crude feel and medieval startup rituals, the F20 became beloved for its ruggedness and simplicity. Farmers could fix it with baling wire and a hammer. It was awkward, loud, and unapologetically rough, but it got the job done. Was it a tractor or a torture device with horsepower? Maybe both, and that's exactly why it stuck around. Number 10. The Caterpillar D2 is one of the most bizarrely charming machines ever built. A compact crawler tractor that looked like a toy but worked like a heavyweight prizefighter. Produced from the late 1930s through the 1950s, the D2 was Caterpillar's smallest diesel crawler at the time. Yet it carried itself with the grit and growl of something twice its size. It ran on a two-cylinder diesel engine that required a separate gasoline pony motor to start, a strange ritual involving levers, cranks, and careful timing that felt more like launching a steam locomotive than firing up a tractor. Once running, it chugged along with a rhythmic thump, belching smoke like a miniature freight train, and moved with a stubborn, tank-like crawl. The controls were famously quirky. Clutch levers, steering brakes, and gear selectors all demanded a unique dance, and driving it smoothly required real skill, not just brute force. And despite its relatively small footprint, the D2 had a reputation for going anywhere, and pulling nearly anything, often outlasting machines much larger and newer. It was loud, awkward, and often covered in grime, but it never gave up. Was the D2 over-engineered brilliance, or just a beautiful diesel-burning oddball? Either way, it earned its cult status one clanky start at a time. Number 9. The Fiat Alice HD11 is a bizarre blend of Italian flair and American muscle, wrapped in a bulldozer that looks like it was built to survive the end of the world. Born from the merger of Fiat and Alice Chalmers in the 1970s, the HD11 inherited a legacy of industrial grit, but added its own twist of unpredictable engineering. Powered by a snarling 6-cylinder diesel engine pushing around 120 horsepower, it packed serious earth-moving capability. But what made it strange wasn't just power, it was personality. The transmission had a notorious reputation for being both indestructible and mysteriously temperamental, with operators often unsure if it was going to shift or throw a tantrum. Controls were stiff, the ride was jarring, and the machine had a habit of leaking oil in places that defied logic, almost like it was sweating from the stress of being alive. Yet the HD11 could dig, push, and rip through terrain with an attitude that bordered on aggressive, all while growling like a bear with indigestion. Mechanics joked it had a mind of its own, and yet those who mastered it swore by its strength and sheer stubborn reliability. Was the HD11 a misunderstood genius, or just a cranky brute in a metal suit? Maybe both, and that's what made it unforgettable. Number 8. The Kamasu D65 is a bulldozer that straddles the line between modern muscle and mechanical mischief, delivering serious power with just enough weirdness to make it unforgettable. On paper, it's a straightforward mid-size crawler, powered by a turbocharged 6-cylinder diesel engine, pushing out around 200 horsepower. But in the field, it behaves like a moody heavyweight boxer. Introduced in various forms since the 1960s, the D65 has evolved, but early models were known for their odd combination of brute strength and twitchy controls. The steering clutches could be brutally stiff, the gear shift had a mind of its own, and the cab layout felt like someone took design cues from a pinball machine. Even newer versions, with their more refined interiors and smoother hydraulics, kept that strange sense of overbuilt simplicity. Operators often joke that the D65 wasn't driven so much as negotiated with, and while its reliability was rarely in question, its personality definitely was. It could be smooth one day and stubborn the next, refusing to reverse without a fight or roaring louder than anything in its class just to prove a point. Is the Kamasu D65 a workhorse with attitude or a diva in a steel shell? Either way, it's one dozer you don't forget once you've wrangled it. Number 7. The White 2-150 Field Boss is one of the strangest machines to ever strut onto a farm. An unapologetically square, silver brute with a name that sounds more like a wrestling champion than a tractor. Released in the late 1970s during a time of brand mergers and badge engineering confusion, the 2-150 came from White Motor Corporation's desperate effort to stay competitive, and it shows in all the weirdest ways. Under the hood was a thirsty Minneapolis Moline-derived turbocharged 6-cylinder diesel cranking out around 150 horsepower, but it ran with the subtlety of a cement mixer and sounded like it was constantly mad at something. The cab was massive yet oddly sterile, like a futuristic office welded onto a locomotive, with controls that felt both overthought and under-tested. The power shift transmission was innovative, but prone to being temperamental, and the electronics, minimal as they were, often behaved like they'd had one too many shocks. Its styling screamed 1980s sci-fi, but its mechanical guts were pure brute force, held together with bolts, ambition, and a touch of chaos. Was the White 215 a visionary tractor ahead of its time, or just a rolling Frankenstein of good ideas poorly glued together? Either way, it earned its Field Boss title in the strangest possible way. Number 6. The John Deere 750K is a modern bulldozer with a strange twist. It looks sleek, sounds high-tech, but has just enough quirks to make seasoned operators scratch their heads. Built for serious earth-moving, it packs a 6-cylinder diesel engine pushing out around 185 horsepower, and it features Deere's advanced hydrostatic transmission system, which is both a blessing and a mystery. Instead of gears, it uses dual-path hydrostats, meaning it drives more like a tank than a traditional dozer, smooth, responsive, and weirdly quiet, which throws off operators expecting the usual roar and lurch. The cab is luxury-level plush, almost eerily so for a machine meant to push dirt, with touchscreen displays, climate control, and seat suspension that rivals some pickup trucks. But despite its refinement, the 750K has been known to throw strange sensor errors or decide it's done working for the day until a computer gives it the green light again. It's like a bulldozer that studied robotics and now gets moody about hydraulic pressure. So, is the 750K a masterpiece of modern machinery or just a high-tech diva in a hard hat? Either way, it's clear. John Deere didn't just build a dozer, they built a machine with opinions. Number 5. The International Harvester 1468 is a bizarre mechanical paradox. A farm tractor with muscle car swagger and a reputation for being as temperamental as it was loud. Released in the mid-1970s, the 1468 looked like a typical red workhorse from IH's lineup. But under the hood lurked something completely unhinged, a V8 diesel engine sourced from a truck, the DV550. It cranked out around 160 horsepower and roared like a dragster at full throttle, thanks to dual vertical exhaust stacks that belched smoke like twin chimneys during hard pulls. But here's the twist. Despite all the noise and power, it was notoriously bad at low-end torque, making it oddly underwhelming for the heavy tillage it was marketed for. Operators loved the sound but hated the sluggish throttle response, and mechanics cursed its complex and finicky engine layout, which didn't play well with overheating or hard work. The 1468 felt like IH decided to build a muscle tractor for no reason other than because they could, sacrificing practicality for sheer auditory spectacle. Was it a bold innovation or just a V8-powered oddball that confused farmers and thrilled gearheads? Either way, the 1468 didn't just farm, it performed whether you wanted it to or not. Number 4, the Minneapolis Moline G1355 is a bizarre mechanical mashup that feels like it was engineered by committee, each member speaking a different language, and none of them reading the same blueprint. Built in the early 1970s during the chaotic days of corporate consolidation under White Motor Corporation, the G1355 wasn't purely a Minneapolis Moline at all. It was an Oliver frame, a Moline badge, and a snarling Caterpillar 3150 V8 diesel engine shoved under the hood like a square peg in a round hole. That engine alone made the tractor infamous. It pumped out around 135 horsepower, with a sound more fitting for a mining truck than a cornfield, and it drank fuel like it was in a contest. The massive V8 barely fit in the chassis, making it a nightmare to service, and the cooling system always seemed one hot day away from surrender. Inside, the operator's platform was a minimalist affair with a seat that bounced more than it cushioned, and the control layout felt like an afterthought, almost daring you to guess which lever did what. Despite its power, the G1355 suffered from being too heavy for some applications and too temperamental for others, with odd torque curves and frequent overheating issues. Mechanics loathed it, collectors chase it, and farmers still argue whether it was ahead of its time or a total mechanical misfire. Was the G1355 a misunderstood powerhouse or just a high-horsepower identity crisis on wheels? Either way, it remains one of the strangest and most unforgettable tractors ever to roar across a field. Number 3. The Stiger Wildcat is a gloriously bizarre beast, a four-wheel drive tractor that looked like it was built by a welding crew with a grudge and ran like it was trying to tear the earth in half. Emerging in the 1970s from Stiger's green-painted legacy of homemade muscle, the Wildcat was one of the smaller models in the lineup, yet still packed a punch with its turbocharged inline-six diesel engine pushing around 200 horsepower. But what made it strange wasn't just the power, it was the whole vibe. The cab sat high like a hunter's perch, the frame was blocky and unapologetically agricultural, and the articulation in the middle gave it a bendy, snake-like motion that looked unnatural the first time you saw it turning. Steering it felt more like piloting a segmented tank than a farm tractor, and the ride was rough enough to loosen your dental work. Despite the harsh manners and industrial looks, it earned cult status for being nearly unbreakable, easily repairable, and defiantly ugly in a world moving towards sleekness. The Wildcat wasn't pretty, polished, or polite, but it was wild in name and nature. Was it overkill for some farms? Absolutely, but that's what made it such a beautifully bizarre legend. Number 2. The Massey Ferguson 97 is a bizarre, badge-engineered brute that perfectly captures the confusion and chaos of mid-century tractor manufacturing. A machine that looks like a Massey, sounds like a Minneapolis Moline, and feels like it was cobbled together in a boardroom rather than a factory floor. Built in the early 1960s as part of Massey's high-horsepower lineup, the 97 wasn't really their own design at all. Underneath that red and gray paint was a Minneapolis Moline G705, complete with its massive HD 800 to 6-cylinder diesel engine, belting out around 125 horsepower. That engine was pure torque monster, smooth, low revving, and loud enough to shake fence posts, but it also weighed a ton and made the tractor feel front-heavy and sluggish at low speeds. The design itself was unapologetically blocky, with a massive nose, squared-off fenders, and a stance that looked more like a Cold War tank than a row crop machine. Climbing into the seat felt like boarding a minimalist spaceship, with stiff mechanical controls and gauges scattered in a layout only their designer could love. The result was a tractor that could pull with the best of them, but had the ergonomics of a forklift and the personality of a diesel-powered mule. Mechanics had to juggle parts catalogs from 2 companies just to keep it alive, and farmers were often left wondering if they'd bought a Massey or a Moline in disguise. Was the 97 a clever merger of muscle and marketing, or just a misfit in corporate costume? Either way, it carved out a reputation as one of the strangest and most oddly compelling tractors of its time. Number 1. The Big Bud 16 Fiat 747 is the most bizarre monster ever to wear tractor tires. An agricultural colossus so massive, it looks like it escaped from a military base or a sci-fi movie set. Built in 1977 by Northern Manufacturing in Havre, Montana, the 747 was custom-ordered by a California cotton farm and powered by a 16-cylinder Detroit diesel engine, cranking out a mind-bending 900 horsepower. It stretches over 27 feet long, stands nearly 14 feet tall, and weighs in at over 100,000 pounds when fully ballasted. Basically a small building on wheels. The cab feels like a control room, the engine bay is a mechanic's Everest, and the rear tires alone are 12 feet tall, sourced from a scrapped mining truck. Despite its gargantuan size, the 747 isn't fast or agile. It moves at a slow, deliberate crawl, chewing up acres with a single pass using a custom-built 80-foot cultivator. It's an over-engineered marvel, designed for scale few farms could even accommodate, and yet it's still fully functional decades later. Was the Big Bud 747 an agricultural miracle, or just a glorious case of because we could? Either way, it remains the world's largest, loudest, and most bizarre tribute to farming without limits.